Today we will be looking at 3 horrifying cave stories that stand out from the rest you have heard before. What makes these tales more tragic is that each involves cavers who made the ill-fated decision to bring their beloved pet dogs along. In one of the stories, the owner's reckless decision led to his dog wedged in a crevice for days. On the 1st of September 2015, a man decided to take his loyal companion, a small cattle dog, on an adventure that would soon turn into a nightmare. The sinking river cave system, with its deep pits and winding passages, was no place for a dog, let alone a human who failed to understand the risks. But this pet owner, blinded by the thrill of exploration, brought his dog along on a journey that would lead to a daunting fate. As they ventured near the cave, the dog's playful curiosity became its undoing. With one careless misstep, the cattle dog tumbled into a blind pit, a sheer 169-foot drop into darkness. The man stood at the edge, staring down into the abyss. Panic set in, but instead of trying to save his faithful companion, he assumed the worst. He feared that his dog didn't make it, and instead of making a rescue attempt, he walked away. The truth, however, was completely different. The dog had survived the fall. She called out her owner with her squeaky voice, but unfortunately, he never heard her cries. For weeks, the small cattle dog, weighing no more than 30 pounds, clung to life. Trapped in the sinking river cave, she was there without food or water, weakened and dehydrated, but not without hope. Day after day, she waited, listening to the echoes of the cave, hoping that someone, anyone, might come to her rescue. At every sound, she must have rushed to the narrow opening of the pit, gazing upward, yearning for the sight of rescue. The darkness for such a traumatized animal must be suffocating. 3 long weeks passed before fate finally intervened. A group of cavers, Mel Edie Pumplin, Rich Pumplin, Mary Klaus, John Scow, and Becky Kaufman, arrived at the same cave system on a different mission. They had set their sights on the very pit that had swallowed the dog, Colorado's deepest, their goal to descend and explore the depths. Unaware of the hidden tragedy below, they prepared for a routine day of caving. Rich Pumplin was the first to rappel down. As he descended into the pit, the familiar sound of shifting gravel beneath his feet was suddenly interrupted by something else, something alive. His voice echoed back to the team above, his tone shifting as he called out to them. Mel, listening from the surface, recognized the way he was speaking. It was the same soft tone he used when talking to animals. They thought it was a small creature, maybe a chipmunk. But when Rich returned to the surface, his expression told a different story. "There's a dog down there," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Put on your small party rescue hats." The team sprang into action. Mary Klaus, who had a soft spot for animals, quickly volunteered to go down and help. She grabbed a large backpack and some supplies, including snacks that she thought might be suitable for a dog, and rappelled into the pit. When she reached the bottom, her heart sank at the sight before her. There, in the dim light of her headlamp, was a small, frail cattle dog, looking up at her with eyes full of exhaustion and silent pleas for help. To Mary's astonishment, the dog had no visible injuries, but her condition was dire. She was weak, starved, and dehydrated. Yet somehow, she remained calm. The poor thing was barely holding on. But when Mary spoke softly to her, something amazing happened. The dog's tail began to wag. In that moment, Mary realized the dog wasn't just waiting for rescue. She was waiting for kind interaction that she was deprived of for weeks. The dog slowly approached, her trust unwavering. Mary fed her a few snacks, and despite the dog's weakened state, the two connected instantly. Initially, the team considered using a rope system to pull the dog up, but they quickly realized how terrifying and traumatic that experience would be for the poor animal. Being dragged up against rough rock walls was not an option. Instead, Mary decided she would carry the dog out on her back. As they carefully placed the dog inside the backpack, the little cattle dog rested her head against Mary's shoulder, her body calm and still. With the dog secured, Mary began the long, steady climb out of the pit. When they reached the surface, the little dog sprang from the backpack with newfound energy. She wiggled her tail furiously and darted around, hopping and rolling in the dirt. The rescuers couldn't help but smile as they watched her, feeling as though her boundless happiness was her way of saying, "Thank you." They tried to guide her back to camp, thinking she might need more help, but the dog had other ideas. She ran off in the opposite direction, her tail wagging as if she knew exactly where she was going. The team couldn't help but wonder if she was a stray, living off the land. News of the dog's rescue spread quickly through the caving community, and several weeks later, another group of cavers encountered the same dog again. Only this time, she wasn't alone. She was with her owner, the very man who had assumed she was lost forever after watching her fall into the pit. The owner was overwhelmed when he recounted his story. He had believed his beloved dog was gone for good, too heartbroken to even attempt a rescue. But 3 weeks later, to his absolute shock, she appeared at his home, tail wagging and eyes filled with forgiveness. It was just supposed to be a relaxing day out in the woods for Delbert Hawkins and his loyal hound named Rat. They set out to explore an unnamed cave deep in the heart of Kentucky on July 16, 2014, thinking it would be a simple adventure. Little did Delbert know he was about to experience a harrowing ordeal that would test his wits, strength, and bond with his dog like never before. As they ventured deeper into the cave, nothing could dampen Rat's excitement. Suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes flashed in the darkness ahead. A raccoon. And in an instant, Rat was off like a rocket, barking and howling as he chased the startled creature into the maze-like tunnels of the cave. Delbert called out to his dog to come back, but it was no use. The echoes of Rat's frantic barks bounced off the cave walls, growing fainter by the second. And then, silence. Delbert's heart sank. Rat was gone. For hours, Delbert searched every crevice, shouting his dog's name until his voice cracked. But the cave seemed endless, an underground labyrinth that swallowed sound and light alike. Exhausted and devastated, Delbert had no choice but to return to the surface and rally a search party. The next 4 days were a blur of desperate hope and heartache. Volunteers from Kentucky showed up, bringing flashlights, ropes, and every bit of determination they could muster. They scoured the cave from top to bottom, but there was no sign of Rat. Delbert feared the worst. His best friend might be trapped, or worse, lost forever in the belly of the earth. Then, on the 4th day, something miraculous happened. The faint, distant sound of barking echoed through the cave. Rat was alive, but he was stuck in a narrow tunnel, wedged tightly, and no one could reach him. The passage was too small for any of the rescuers to squeeze through. Imagine the poor thing inside like this, for 4 straight days, without any sign of getting out, without any food or water. After knowing people arrived, Rat started barking again. His barks were weak but filled with hope as he saw his owner after 4 long days and the rescuers. He tried to wriggle free, his body straining against the rocks, but it was no use. He was stuck. Desperation filled his eyes as he cried out louder, his paws scraping at the tight walls around him. His owner called out softly, trying to calm him down, but Rat only wriggled harder, as if he believed he could break free just by hearing that familiar voice. It was heartbreaking for everyone, watching him struggle, knowing how hard it was for him, and feeling so helpless themselves. Delbert was not about to give up on his dog. They figured out that to get to him, they need to advise another plan. They brought in a backhoe to dig into the cave from the surface, hoping to reach the tunnel where Rat was trapped. Dirt and rock flew as the machine tore into the ground. It was a race against time. As they made a new passage from the surface, the backhoe worked tirelessly, and meanwhile the rescue team enlisted the help of a local cave-crawling expert. Armed with drills and scraps of bologna, they went in with sheer determination. The man wriggled his way into the tight passage, scraping away the rock, making a wider opening to reach the dog. Rat was stuck tight and trapped. His fur was dirty, and his sad eyes looked at them, helpless and scared. Each little breath came with a soft cry of pain, like he was begging for help. His whimpers echoed around the cave, making the rescuers feel desperate. They knew they had to get him out quickly before he got too weak. They made the tunnel wider and called him out. And then, out of the darkness, Rat's nose appeared, followed by his muddy, wagging tail. The crowd erupted in cheers as the exhausted hound crawled out, bologna still clutched in his mouth. Rat was saved, and Delbert couldn't hold back the tears as he hugged his dog tightly, vowing never to take him into another cave again. Rat was reported to be in good condition even after being several days underground. This final story serves as a powerful lesson for everyone involved. Never drag innocent souls into dangers you can't protect them from. On May 23, 2012, the peaceful hiking trails of Thatcher Park, New York, were interrupted by a tense and chaotic turn of events. Yale, a burly pit bull known for his strength and love of adventure, was out on a hike with his family. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and the group had no idea that their day would take a drastic turn. As they reached a rocky overlook, the group paused to peer into the yawning entrance of Fool's Crawl, a notorious cave in the area. It was a spot the family had heard of, but never dared to explore. But Yale, always the curious and energetic pup, had different ideas. His ears perked up, his nose twitching as he caught a scent on the breeze. Before anyone could react, Yale yanked the leash from his owner's hand and bolted straight into the mouth of Fool's Crawl. His owner shouted, but it was too late. The pit bull disappeared into the darkness like a shadow, leaving his owners stunned and helpless at the entrance. Panic set in as they realized how deep and treacherous Fool's Crawl was. The cave was infamous for its narrow passages, underground pools, and a maze-like structure that had trapped more than a few adventurers over the years. With no other options, Yale's owners frantically contacted the park authorities, who immediately called Tom Engel, a seasoned cave rescuer known for his expertise in situations like this. Engel wasted no time and called in reinforcements. Emily Davis and Mike Warner, two experienced cavers with nerves of steel. By the time they arrived at Fool's Crawl, it was already close to 3 p.m., and the clock was ticking. Emily Davis, the most experienced in the group, suited up in a wetsuit, grabbed a bag of dog treats, and plunged into the cave. Armed with only a flashlight and the sound of her own breathing, she ventured deeper and deeper into the twisting tunnels of Fool's Crawl. Every step echoed in the eerie silence of the cave, each shadow playing tricks on her eyes. After what felt like an eternity, she found Yale, about 300 feet in, crouched in the darkness. But to her shock, the normally friendly pit bull wasn't his usual self. His eyes glowed in the dim light of her headlamp, and a low growl rumbled from his throat. His lips curled back, revealing his teeth. Emily knew the dog must have been terrified, trapped, confused, and unable to recognize friend from foe in the stifling underground maze. Not wanting to push her luck, Emily slowly backed away, careful not to provoke the frightened animal. Back at the cave entrance, Emily reported the situation to the rest of the team. It was clear that Yale needed someone familiar to coax him out, and fast. Time was running out, and every minute the dog spent trapped in the cave increased the risk of injury, or worse. Luckily, Mike Warner was about the same size as Yale's owner, so Emily hatched a plan. They suited up Yale's owner in Warner's gear, and with Emily leading the way, the two headed back into the cave. The atmosphere was tense. Yale's owner, heart pounding in his chest, was desperate to see his dog again. He called out for Yale as they made their way deeper into the tunnels. Another 100 feet in, they finally found Yale, curled up in a tight corner. The pit bull's demeanor had completely changed. When he heard his owner's voice, his ears perked up and his eyes softened. His tail wagged furiously, thumping against the cave wall. Yale rushed toward his owner with such enthusiasm that he nearly knocked him over, whining and licking his face as if to say, "Where have you been?" Relieved and overjoyed, Yale's owner clipped a leash onto his harness, but it wasn't needed. The dog was so eager to get out that he practically dragged his owner through the narrow tunnels, navigating the cave with the skill of an expert spelunker. By the time they reached the surface, it was just before 4 p.m. The group erupted into cheers as Yale emerged from the cave, muddy but unharmed. The once frantic pit bull was now wagging his tail so hard, it looked like it might fall off. The rescue had been a success, but it was a close call. Yale's family, forever grateful, vowed to keep their adventurous pup far away from any caves in the future.